can you explain to us what is the Apollo framework and why do we have it?
Yes. So yeah, thank you so much. Um, yeah. So as you mentioned, we have collected and attracted a bunch of really high profile, really great entrepreneurs. So these are not only my learnings; these are the learnings of our whole team building maybe $300 or $400 million worth of enterprise value. I would say amongst us and saying like and having probably lost much more than that
Yeah.
in a sense that we didn't get all of these. It's probably a bit hard to see, but maybe we can get it on the screen. But we have 15 boxes here that are divided into three sort of swim lines. And what they kind of what we use these boxes for is try to map out different areas where you need to succeed. So it's a little bit kind of identifying where do you sort of need to play to win, and also what does it mean, what is the definition of it, what components are in it, and in the end it becomes sort of this mapping exercise or like a lens in which to see an organization through. Looking into the actual framework, we have on the top we have capabilities or sort of the crew. So the reason why we both call it capabilities and the crew was to kind of recognize that instead of saying you need these people, then it's more like you need these capabilities. So it's more on an outcome based kind of thinking than it's on a person thinking level. But regardless, there are five boxes that we kind of identified that are super important to get anywhere. First of all, you need some leadership. There's some mission and vision. There's some sequencing that somebody needs to be doing. There is the day-to-day energy. There is storytelling, inspiration within the team, within the businesses. There is like you need to coach, and we have a specific framework that we can spend a lot of time that has to do with talents, TT38, psychometrics, all these kind of things. But there's a bunch of things that goes into leadership, for instance, about incentivizing energy, ownership, and hiring people that you need. So that would be one box, um, and and that is one of the capabilities that need that you sort of need on the crew side. Um, Other things, without going into all of the specifics, you'd say you need some sort of GTM excellence, and it can be a hire that is your head of GTM, but it could also be that the studio founder who has the CEO leadership GP, however he entitles himself, could also be the GTM capability. So it's just to kind of say it depends on the team, but it is a capability that is needed. The same then goes for you need somebody in product tech or innovation excellence, you could say. That would typically also be like head of product, CPO type person, CTO could also be CTPO, but you need this capability as well, right? And then you need people to execute. You need operators. You need people, and everybody will obviously in a small team be in operations, but still there are certain people like founders associates could be a good example, COOs type get shit done type people. They are also very instrumental to the success. And then the last people, the last sort of capability people think we think is important in this dimension is the domain expertise, because it just helps you immensely to build up your studio if you have a very clear thesis on what are you building, who are you building for, what's the ICP. The stronger you become on the ICP, the more you know your customer, your client, the easier it becomes to build a flywheel also of the different sort of engines, underlying technologies that you're building, because you can keep rolling out some of the same things, but maybe with a different attack vector or in a little bit different light, right? So this domain expertise will just also help you to understand the problem that you're trying to solve, right?
The processes that you need in a venture studio. And we've talked about the crew or the capabilities, and the processes, or as we like to call it, the rocket, is being manned by that crew, right? So everybody has their battle stations, everybody knows what they need to do, but they also follow a process, right? You don't want your rocket crew to go rogue. And again, we have 5 processes here that we look deeply into. I'll start with the first one, and then I'll throw it over to you, Torbjörn. But that is really about your operations, finance, hiring. It's the whole back-end stack for your venture studio. And the reason why we emphasize this is we're trying to do something quite complex. We're trying to build multiple businesses that will go on and become huge in their own rights. There are many moving parts, and really need to make sure that we're not swamped with uh, uh, tedious tasks to be done in our team. And especially when we have these experts in our crew, we want them to play to their strengths and not be locked or held back by operations. So that's one of the first things we look to get right: having the right tool stack, having the right databases, processes for stuff like finance and hiring that set us up to actually build multiple businesses. And then the next four are very intertwined. So that is the venture building process. That's everything from coming up with the right ideas, turning them into products, getting them into the market and charging money for your products. And then when you succeed, scaling them from there. So Thor, it would be great if you can take us through these underlying processes and how we've structured them.
Yeah, thank you. So, yes, as you said, like we have the crew, right? And it's great to have the crew because those are the people who man the rocket. But if they don't know what to do within the rocket, but they kind of just have the natural abilities to or the potential to do the right things, it's still a problem, right? And that is why companies that really succeed, they tend to have different sort of frameworks and processes and systems and things like that they then can operate in, because that just amplifies the sort of potential of each individual superstar, you could say. And then if you look at that from a very kind of venture studio specific angle, there are 3 or 4 buckets that we have identified, which are the ideation, first of all, which is like, as a venture studio, you're not only running with one idea, building one company, you're building multiple companies. It's part of your superpower to be able to do this. That means that you need an ideation and research framework where you come up with a lot of ideas, you establish an idea bank, you know how to kind of sequence it, and you know which filters it had to go through, and you know how to kind of use your domain expertise to say, this is the ICP we're working within, these are the things that normally fails within this domain, and generally so that you get high quality ideas as well, and also so that you know which of the idea do we select in the end, and have a strong framework for that, so that you are ensure that you are running with a high potential idea, but also one that is not so insanely big that it doesn't make sense with whatever stage you are at, right? That when you then chosen your idea, the next point, kind of bucket that we identified, is the product development process. So one thing is that you have you have product and tech sort of excellence within your team, but again, you need to kind of think about how can we take this idea and validate it as fast as possible, because there is this resource question always with a startup, right? Where it's like, we have limited resources, we have limited time, and we need to kind of select what parameters should we go for. And I think for many startups, it used to be the MVP, the minimum viable product. It was a very popular sort of concept to work through. But as sort of, I think that our capabilities as a startup ecosystem and with technology, AI, playbooks, frameworks has kind of increased, we believe now that this SLC model, the simple, lovable, and complete, it's like you take a slice of everything instead of only the bottom part, so that you have a more finalized brand, you have a more kind of at least one feature that is really strong. So it's a little bit looks more like a final product. That is what you need to get to. And in the product development process, you probably have a very clear kind of you have some gates that you need to go through in order to kind of validate what are we building, when is our ISP happy with whatever it is we are selling, and just how do we build it, because it can be
Yeah, so if I could just stop you there and double click, what could be a validation gate that you need to get through? So we had some idea, we selected it, we're building on it, but we're quite aware that we might also fail and want to go back and select another idea. So what would be an example of a gate that, a metric or some kind of outcome that we need to deliver in our product development process before we're confident in moving ahead?
Yeah, so there could be different milestones. From the product perspective, you will do a lot of experimentation, and you create like the ICP, the business model, the customer journey. You do a lot of workshop and do a lot of work, right? But then the actual kind of targets, that brings us a little bit to the next box, which is the GTM, the go-to-market and the revenue generation box, where it's like, again, you have a head of GTM, you have a commercially minded co-founder of the studio founder, if you will, but you still need to kind of figure out how, what are these targets that you're talking about? Like, is it revenue? Is it user targets? Is it LOIs? Is it people actually? Or usually it comes down to something at the likes that without spending too many resources in the build, you need people to kind of swing the card, right? To show that they have a high intent on actually being in the first kind of cohort of this. Because if you can get 10 customers with a not optimized product at all, you could probably get 1,000 with an optimized product, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe on a higher level on this GTM and revenue generation block, it's very important to understand that the person who is working with the commercial, instead of just having to spend 18 months figuring out what, how should we do this, how should we approach this, then he already comes in with the sort of the plan where it's like, is it a B2B product, is it a B2C product, how do we work with top of funnel, mid of funnel, conversion rate, how do we go through everything, right? So that it becomes a much more kind of robust, and you hit the ground running, you could say, right? So that's very much the point of this, of getting that kind of point under control.
Mm-hmm.
Then the last thing we have, which is kind of segues a little bit out from there, because then you get into scaling when you actually succeed. So let's say you do actually validate, you do hit your targets, everything is going as well as you wanted. You want to now kind of proceed, and the way that we see that is that we love to at least with all of this process, to also kind of write down this sort of founding document where everybody that comes on board can now understand and see what happened, why did something happen, what is the ICP, what is not the ICP, which theses were not correct and which were correct, and all these sort of things are just things that if you want to scale any product idea, then it becomes much easier for no matter where you work in the upcoming organization to understand. But then you also just need to figure out what are we even how will we get major success with this, right? Does it require a lot of capital? Do we just get a small amount of one and done sort of funding from our studio itself? Is it an operator model? Is it do we spin out with some of the people who were in the process that where we kind of validated the product? You just need this kind of strong ship-off process to kind of understand where you're going here, right?
We've covered the capabilities, we've covered the processes. Let's talk about the resources. So we have the right crew, we have the right rocket. We need enough fuel to shoot for the stars and potentially even land on the moon. Torbjørn, can you walk us through these buckets, and then let's have a discussion about them?
Yeah, sure. So resources, every rocket needs some fuel, right? So we see it a little bit like that. There are different things, but not all fuel is just cash, right? But it's certainly an important element. So the first one we have is just you need to have some cash in the bank, right? You need to you need to understand also different things here. So you need to understand finance. You need to understand your burn rate. You need to understand like how are you cost efficient. You need to kind of tap into soft funding. You need to be good at accessing a lot of free things, a lot of free services, a lot of free tools, and you need to be able to plan ahead. So when we say cash in bank, it's not only that you actually need the funding secured, it is also that you understand how to kind of use it well. Runway management and financial advisory, which is something that we are really good at in Bifrost. We have individual hires that kind of help people also a little bit with this, as we don't see it as every founder's biggest strength. Typically, they are pretty good with numbers, but they don't enjoy spending all their day in financial models and budgets. Then we also see it as a resource or fuel, how well you are able to leverage us. So by looking through that lens and having the buckets of like how well are you actually able to leverage whatever capabilities are internally in Bifrost, you're kind of be able to just get more by saying like, okay, we're really not performing well on this bucket in the Apollo framework. Can you help us? Then we say, yes, of course. We are your
Yeah.
partner. We are very interested in your success. So that's one of them as well. Um, then there is one part that is maybe very underrated and can definitely be a game changer, or like at least break everything if it's not kind of okay. It's like the mental state of the team. That's also a resource. It's also part of the fuel. You need to, and it goes hand in hand also with the leadership sort of bracket. But you need people to individually perform. You need to make sure that they don't burn out. That's typically related to their talents, top talents, which is a framework we work with a lot. We even built a company around it that is doing pretty well already. You need to maybe have some element of coaching, at least from the leadership or within the team. This thing about working within your top talents, if we can just touch upon it briefly because
Sure.
it's such a big thing for us. So one of our companies, Atlas People, is working with this framework developed by Gallup, like 25 years, 600,000 subjects. So it's very heavily researched. And it basically what it says is if you look at motivation and if you look at neurology, like from a neurological perspective, we all have different talents, and these talents they are the same, but they will be more pronounced on some dimensions for me than they will be for Jonathan. And if I work in my top talents, where I might be motivated, could maybe be a very targeted talent or a holistic talent for me, then I will 1 hours of work would seem like 10 minutes. But if I work in my bottom talents, which might be something like assessing something or something very specifically nerdy around some subject, then it will seem to me over time as 6 to 9 hours of work. And this is just something that people are starting to realize how much it actually matters. So from the mental state of the team, and this is also why hiring is so important. And that's also one of our brackets and something I know you work intensely with.
Yeah.
And to make sure that everybody in the team is working within their top titles will in itself also make the mental state of the team much better. But anyways, so there's an important bracket here also about appreciating the people who work. Make sure you celebrate your triumphs. Make sure the people on a learning curve. Maybe make sure the people are also moving, getting some sports, eating well. So all of these things, they do matter a lot. In the fundability, there are certain components that we believe that kind of makes for great fundability. You need to have a kind of a great venture studio thesis so that you are focused, that you can kind of explain. You need to have some kind of brand established around a place where sort of your studio lives, if you will. You need to have a team according to the crew kind of dimensions that can so that you can show that, well, not only do we have the thesis, we also have the right people to kind of nail it, right? And you need to also have a financial model of sorts that will show how you're going to work with the resources that you have and the resources that you're going to, if you are looking to fundraise, it is about fundability. And yeah, typically what we do is kind of create some kind of deck with where you can kind of put all of this together. And what happens when you make a deck, by the way, is also that everybody gets on the same page with a lot of these things. So it's also a great exercise for the team, anyways, to just kind of make sure that everybody is aligned. And if you have all these things, you kind of become pretty fundable. And the reason why it's important then is like, let's say that you are not at a default alive stage yet. So in VC, you are default dead because you are, if you run out of money, you're dead. But we work, because we work towards a very strong path to profitability, we kind of say, can we find a way where we can get strong enough revenue so that we are default alive and have this kind of evergreen model, right? But let's say that you're not there yet, but you still have interesting stuff you're working on. You have traction. You have a lot of different things working for you. Then you can go out and fundraise for the studio itself to just make sure that you can prolong your, until you kind of reach that stage where you can succeed. Yes.
Great, great. And the final bucket in our kind of resources or fuel segment of this framework is the capacity. And what do we mean when we say capacity? You can have the perfect team, you can have the perfect process, but if everybody is operating at limit, you'll never have the bandwidth to start new stuff, right? And that's ultimately what we're after with Venture Studios. So there are a couple of components we look for in terms of managing capacity. And one of the kind of maybe surprising ones is how good are you at killing unpromising ideas? So capacity is one of those resource constraints that we have. And so we want to make sure our team is always gravitating towards the kind of highest output idea or the highest output activities. And that's a very overlooked thing in Venture Studio, that people who come from startups or a more traditional entrepreneurial journey, they're just in that one thing and they will do whatever to make it succeed. But here we have the optionality to work on something else and kill what's not that promising before over-investing potentially, right? So we can grab the resources from that and reallocate them to something else. So I would say that's the most important thing. But then it's also about how do we leverage tools? How do we leverage our people with, say, freelancers or low-cost hires across the world so that we can maintain a rather small team, but constantly bump up their capacity to work on things. So yeah, that kind
I
of
think it's very befitting, actually. It's the last kind of bucket we have,
Yeah.
because your capacity will go vastly up if you get all of the other things right.
It will.
So, because then you have all the people you need, you have all the processes you need, you have all the resources, you have the right sequencing, you have people with the right mental state firing and on all cylinders. If something goes wrong, you can raise money. You basically know how to do everything, and you know how to hire people, so you can also increase your capacity, right? But there is a lot of kill your darlings sort of things also in the studio environment, because maybe if just pivot it a little bit, but you also have to just say it is one of the strengths that we can just take the next idea and the next idea and then still take the learnings from whatever we did and make it a little bit better next time, because in the end it is just a skill to create a business in itself as well.
It is.